Let's be completely honest for a second here. Think about a time when you were totally alone in a room. Maybe you were pacing, maybe just doing the dishes, and you suddenly caught yourself speaking out loud to absolutely no one. Usually, the immediate reaction is a quick glance over your shoulder, right? Just hoping your roommate or your cat didn't just witness you passionately debating the merits of different dish soaps. We've all been heavily conditioned to keep our thoughts tucked away quietly inside our heads. But what if I told you that this secret, often kind of embarrassing reality is actually a hidden superpower? Seriously. Let's dive into this explainer, because what we're unpacking today is absolutely going to change how you view your own mind. I want you to picture a moment where you paused mid-task and literally muttered to the empty room, "Why did I actually do that?" Or maybe it was, "Where did I put those keys?" Or even just, "Okay, what's the next step?" In that exact fraction of a second, something incredibly unusual happened in your brain. You didn't just have a thought, you vocalized it. You effectively created a real conversation with yourself. Now, society has a whole lot of opinions about this, but science? Science has a completely different take. Section 1. The misunderstood quiet habit. For the longest time, society has kind of labeled talking to yourself as strange, a little odd, or even a sign of loneliness or cognitive decline. But decades of hard scientific research tell us the exact opposite. Far from being some weird glitch in your brain, this habit is actually linked to 7 highly developed, rare psychological traits. It actually reveals a mind that is incredibly powerful and engaged. So over the course of this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what these 7 rare traits are, one by one. Section 2. Awareness and solving problems. All right, the first rare trait is a profoundly high level of self-awareness. When you speak out loud to yourself, you are practicing what's called reflective awareness. You essentially split your mind into 2 distinct parts. One part of you acts, and the other part steps back to act as an observer. And this is really the heart of self-knowledge. Think about it. Most people move through their day on total autopilot, just reacting to things without ever really reflecting on them. But the self-talker, they do the exact opposite. By speaking your choices and feelings into the air, you turn your mind into a mirror. You don't just feel angry, you ask yourself why you're angry. You interrogate your own decisions. Every quiet conversation you have with yourself is this small, deliberate act of paying attention to the one person we often understand the least, ourselves. Way back, nearly a century ago, the famous Russian psychologist Lev Vygotsky made a monumental discovery about this. He found that children naturally talk to themselves out loud to guide their own behavior. As we grow up, Vygotsky noted that this private speech never really disappears, it just goes underground. It basically becomes that silent inner voice that narrates your adult life. But for those who still let that voice out loud, they are tapping back into a fundamental, deeply ingrained mechanism for self-regulation and close self-examination. And this deeply ingrained mechanism builds directly into trait number 2, a remarkably strong problem-solving ability. There is a very specific scientific reason why brilliant engineers mutter to themselves at whiteboards and why grandmaster chess players whisper through their potential moves. They are leveraging a powerful cognitive tool known as the self-explanation effect. This isn't just some quirky figure of speech either. It's a proven psychological phenomenon where explaining a problem to yourself actually helps you understand it more deeply and solve it more reliably than if you were to just stare at it in total silence. So how exactly does this cognitive tool work? Well, step 1, you start with a tangled, kind of fuzzy, half-formed idea in your head. When you just keep it up there, it's super easy for your brain to gloss over the details. But then comes step 2. You force yourself to speak it out loud. Speaking literally forces your brain to slow down and translate that fuzziness into a precise sentence. You have to give it syntax. And because of that, step 3 just happens naturally. You expose the next gap or mistake. The moment a flawed plan hits the air, it sounds wrong in a way it never did while it was just echoing around inside your head. Your spoken words act as a real-time quality control check under pressure. While everyone else just freezes up, the self-talker is quietly organizing the chaos, working the problem one spoken sentence at a time. They aren't inherently smarter just because they talk to themselves. They simply think more clearly because they do. Section 3. Emotions, creativity, and focus. Trait number 3 is honestly an almost unfair ability to regulate emotions. Try a little experiment the next time you're nervous. Don't tell yourself, "I'm so anxious." Instead, use your own name. Tell yourself, "Okay, you've got this. You've handled way worse." I know, it sounds a little strange, but this tiny shift in pronouns is incredibly powerful. Psychologist Ethan Kross at the University of Michigan has studied this extensively. He found that when people talk to themselves using their own name or the word you instead of I, they create instant psychological distance from their own overwhelming emotions. You literally stop drowning in the feeling and start coaching yourself through it. In Cross's research, people who used this distant self-talk before a stressful task felt less anxious, performed better, and recovered faster. The exact same brain that was about to spiral is literally talked back down by its own owner. And that brings us to trait 4, a much higher level of creativity. Look at almost any great inventor, writer, or artist, and you'll find they constantly talk to themselves while they work. Creativity is all about connecting things that don't obviously belong together, right? Silent thinking really struggles with this because ideas tend to just circle the same familiar grooves. But when you use your mind out loud, in stereo, you can do something amazing. You can argue with yourself, you can play multiple characters, you can ask what if, and then answer in a completely different voice. A conversation with no one becomes this dynamic brainstorm with a room full of different versions of you. And the best part? You know everyone in the room is a genius. Spoken out loud, these strange, half-formed thoughts collide, and connections form that logic alone would literally never have reached. Now for trait 5, and this is one most folks completely misjudge: extraordinary focus. We tend to think that extreme focus requires total silence, head down, mouth shut. But psychologists have actually found the spoken word sharpens attention. Short, rapid-fire cues like eyes up, follow through, or stay low are used constantly by elite athletes. Sports psychologists have proven these cues measurably improve performance. And even in our daily lives, rattling off keys, wallet, phone as you're rushing out the door is your voice acting as a personal coach. It locks your attention onto a single task and just shuts out the external noise completely. People who narrate their work are incredibly hard to distract. Section 4. Independence and continuous growth. Trait 6 is a fierce independence of thought. In a world that is constantly trying to tell you what to think every waking second, most people naturally reach outward when they're unsure. They scroll, they ask around, they look for someone else to just hand them the answer. But people who talk to themselves, they turn inward first. They build the habit of running an idea past their own judgment before borrowing anyone else's. When you regularly think out loud, you get used to the sound of your own reasoning. You learn to question it, test it, and ultimately, you learn to trust it. You grow really comfortable sitting with hard problems alone. Now, this doesn't make you stubborn. In fact, because you regularly argue with yourself, you're often way quicker to admit when you're wrong. But it does mean you rely far less on outside approval. Hearing your own voice over the noise of the crowd is almost a rebellious act. Which leads us to trait 7, perhaps the rarest one of all, a relentless drive for continuous personal growth. Notice the thread running through everything we've just discussed. Before a big moment, the self-talker rehearses it. After a hard day, they replay it, asking what they could have done differently. When they fail, they don't just wallow in it. They ask out loud what the failure has to teach them. Their inner dialogue isn't just idle chatter. It's this continuous quiet feedback loop of reflection and adjustment. Real growth doesn't usually happen in massive, dramatic leaps. It happens in thousands of small, private conversations where you hold yourself accountable, forgive yourself, and decide to try again tomorrow. The self-talker is actively having those conversations every single day. Section 5. The power of your voice. So the big takeaway here is this. What the world so easily dismisses as an odd, lonely habit is actually one of the most useful tools the human mind has ever developed. Let's rapidly recap what that voice gives you. Higher self-awareness, sharper problem-solving, steadier emotions, deeper creativity, stronger focus, independent thinking, and an endless drive to improve. These are 7 incredibly rare traits, all carried by one quiet voice in an empty room. That voice isn't a sign that something's wrong with you. It is the visible, audible sign of a mind that simply refuses to stop learning, adapting, and growing. It's a literal superpower, and you've had it all along. Which wraps up this explainer. I really want to leave you reflecting on your own habits. Do you talk to yourself when you're alone? And if so, which of these 7 traits sounds the most like you? The next time you catch yourself whispering to an empty room, absolutely do not feel embarrassed. Embrace it. You are just utilizing your mind to its absolute fullest potential. Thanks for joining me on this one, and definitely keep that inner conversation going.